Elon Musk confronts manager firing worker. His action stuns all. The office buzzed with the sound of ringing phones, the quiet hum of conversation, and the soft click of keyboards typing away. It seemed like an ordinary day at the corporate office. But for Anna, it was anything but. She sat in the middle of the sleek, modern office, clutching a stack of papers that she had been meticulously organizing. She hadn't been expecting this. The manager, Greg, stood across from her, his arms crossed. His gaze was cold, almost clinical, as he looked over her work performance report. "Anna," he began, his voice carrying that air of authority he always seemed to command. "You know the numbers aren't good. You've been slipping, and we've given you multiple chances to improve. But it's not working." Anna's heart pounded in her chest. She had worked so hard for this company, and this wasn't how she had imagined it ending. She had been hoping for a chance to turn things around, but Greg's words felt like the final blow. "I can do better. I just need more time," she pleaded, her voice betraying the panic she felt creeping in. Greg didn't flinch. He didn't seem moved by her plea at all. "It's too late for more time. You've had plenty of chances, Anna. You're just not cutting it anymore." Anna's hands trembled as she clutched the papers even tighter. She had been blindsided by the decision, unable to prepare herself for the crushing reality that her job was on the line. She tried to steady her breath, but the room felt smaller, suffocating almost. How had everything gone wrong so quickly? In the corner of the room, just out of the direct line of sight, Elon Musk sat, observing the situation. He had been in the office for an entirely different reason, but the commotion had drawn his attention. He had noticed Anna earlier, her work ethic, her drive, and the way she approached everything with passion. She wasn't someone who had just slipped, as Greg had said. No, there was something more to it. Something wasn't adding up. Musk's gaze was unwavering, watching Anna closely as she pleaded with Greg. He had seen this type of corporate coldness before, where the numbers mattered more than the people behind them. But something about the way Greg spoke to her, the absolute lack of empathy in his voice, caught Musk off guard. This wasn't how it should be. No one should ever be treated like this, especially not after all the effort they had put in. As Anna's voice broke with emotion, Greg remained indifferent, flipping through the papers with an air of indifference, as if he had already made up his mind. He wasn't going to offer any further help or understanding. "You can gather your things and leave," Greg said flatly, as if it was nothing more than an ordinary task. Anna froze. The words hit her like a blow to the chest. She could hardly comprehend what he was saying. It felt like the room was spinning, her thoughts scrambling to find any sense in the words. She opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. What could she possibly say that would make him change his mind? Greg gave her no chance to speak. He motioned toward the door, signaling for Anna to leave without another word. The finality in his actions left no room for discussion. Anna felt her stomach twist in knots as she stood up from her chair, her legs shaky beneath her. The walk to her desk felt like an eternity. Each step seemed to echo louder in her ears. As she reached for her belongings, she could feel the weight of the room pressing down on her. She knew she had given everything to her job, and now, here she was, being discarded without a second thought. She could feel the eyes of the others in the room on her, but they said nothing. There were no comforting words, no voices of support. Everyone just watched silently as Anna collected her things, her heart heavy with the realization that her time here had come to an end. But something unexpected happened. As Anna reached for her coat, she noticed a presence in the doorway. Elon Musk had stepped closer, his calm demeanor standing in stark contrast to the tension in the room. His gaze was fixed on her, but it was not judgmental. No, it was one of understanding, as if he could see the weight she was carrying, even if no one else did. Greg, sensing Musk's presence, straightened his posture. "Is there a problem, Mr. Musk?" Greg asked, his tone shifting slightly as he addressed the billionaire who was now in the room. Musk didn't answer immediately. Instead, he watched Anna for a moment longer before his gaze turned back to Greg. He studied the manager for a long, uncomfortable beat. The silence stretched between them, and for a moment, It felt like the whole room was holding its breath. "I don't think you're seeing the whole picture here, Greg," Musk finally said, his voice steady and calm. "You don't get to just throw someone out without understanding the full story." The words were simple, but they carried weight. There was a power in Musk's stance, an authority that wasn't based on position or wealth, but on respect for people and their efforts. He wasn't going to let this moment slip by without doing something. Greg, seemingly caught off guard by Musk's words, opened his mouth to protest. But before he could, Musk continued. "Sometimes it's about more than just the numbers, Greg," he said, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "It's about the people behind them, the people who are trying their best every day, despite everything going wrong. I can see that Anna's been putting in the work, and yet you're so focused on her shortcomings that you've forgotten everything she's done right." For a moment, there was a shift in the air, a quiet realization that something significant was happening. Anna had stopped moving. Her back was turned to both Musk and Greg, but she could feel it. She could feel that something was changing, something that might be her last chance. And just as she was about to turn around and face the reality of her situation, Elon Musk stepped forward once again, his eyes fixed on Greg. The confrontation was about to begin in full force. Elon Musk stood firm, his gaze unwavering as he looked Greg up and down, sizing up the man who had just made the decision to fire Anna. The room felt thick with tension, the air heavy as Greg squirmed under Musk's intense scrutiny. He had been taken by surprise, unable to fully process the fact that Musk was questioning his authority, even if he'd been in charge for years. It wasn't like Greg to back down from anything, but this was different. There was something about Musk's presence that made him uncomfortable. Greg cleared his throat, his confidence starting to waver. "I understand your point, Mr. Musk," Greg said, attempting to regain control of the situation. "But you don't know the full scope of things. This is about numbers, about results. We've given Anna plenty of chances, and she just hasn't delivered." Musk didn't flinch. "You think I'm here to argue about numbers, Greg? No, this is about a person, a human being, and you're treating her like she doesn't matter. The fact that you're so quick to dismiss her effort without even considering the context says a lot about how you view the people you work with." Anna stood in the corner, her heart pounding in her chest as the conversation continued. She hadn't expected anyone to speak up for her, let alone someone like Elon Musk. But here he was, standing up to Greg on her behalf. She wasn't sure how to feel. Part of her wanted to sink into the floor and disappear, while another part felt a strange sense of hope. Maybe this wasn't over. Maybe, just maybe, she had a chance to make things right. Greg, on the other hand, was losing his composure. He wasn't used to being challenged like this, especially not by someone with the stature of Elon Musk. "You don't understand, Mr. Musk," Greg said, his voice slightly shakier now. "This is a business. We can't afford to let emotions get in the way. If Anna can't do her job, then there's no place for her here." Musk took a deep breath and slowly shook his head. "It's not just about her job. It's about the bigger picture. You're focused on firing her. But what about the impact that's going to have on the team? On her well-being? I've seen people like you take the easy route and let someone go without even considering the emotional toll it takes on them. But I'm not here to watch you destroy someone's life for the sake of business." Greg's face reddened, and he took a step closer to Musk. He was clearly annoyed now, his posture becoming more defensive. "You don't get to come in here and tell me how to run my company, Musk. I've been doing this for years. You may be a genius with tech, but this is my department, and I know what's best for it." Musk didn't flinch, his expression remaining calm and controlled. "You're not listening, Greg," he said slowly, his voice cutting through the tension in the room. "I'm not here to tell you how to run your department. I'm here to remind you that people are not just numbers. The fact that you can't see that is what's truly alarming." Anna felt the weight of the conversation settling on her shoulders. She didn't know what to do, didn't know whether she should speak up or stay silent. She felt as if her fate was hanging in the balance, and she wasn't sure if it was slipping further away or if something was about to shift in her favor. Elon's words were like a lifeline thrown her way, but it still felt like the situation was out of her hands. Meanwhile, Greg continued to struggle to maintain his composure. He knew Musk wasn't going to back down, but he wasn't sure how far this confrontation would go. Would Musk continue to push him? Would he try to involve others? Or would he back off and let Greg make the final decision? Anna has been here for a long time, Greg, Musk continued, his voice firm but not unkind. You don't just throw someone like that out because they hit a rough patch. There's always room for improvement, but it starts with empathy. And you're not showing her any. Greg's face twisted with frustration, his jaw clenched tight. He had never been one to let anyone challenge his authority, especially not in front of an outsider. But Musk wasn't just an outsider. He was a figure with far more power and influence than anyone Greg had encountered before. And right now, it seemed as if Musk was calling his bluff, forcing him to confront his own arrogance. I'm not going to sit here and listen to you lecture me about empathy, Greg snapped, his voice rising. You don't know what it's like to run a business like this. You don't know the pressure we're under, the demands we have to meet. You don't get to come in here and pretend like you understand what I'm dealing with. Musk's eyes narrowed, his voice steady and unwavering. Maybe I don't understand what you're dealing with, but I do understand what it's like to feel like you've been abandoned, to feel like you're being judged by a system that doesn't care about you. And that's exactly what you're doing to Anna right now. You're telling her she's not good enough, without giving her the opportunity to prove herself. And that's wrong. Greg glared at Musk, but there was a flicker of doubt in his eyes now. The words hit harder than he had expected. He hadn't really thought about how Anna might feel, how her situation might be affecting her. He had been so focused on the numbers, on the performance metrics, that he had forgotten to see the person standing in front of him. But instead of backing down, Greg doubled down. This isn't about feelings. This is about results. And if Anna can't meet those results, then there's nothing more to talk about. Elon shook his head again, disappointment flashing across his face. That's where you're wrong, Greg, he said, his voice almost a whisper now. It's always about people. And if you can't see that, then you're not the right person for this job. Anna couldn't believe what she was hearing. It was as though the world had shifted, and for the first time in a long while, someone was actually standing up for her. She felt a small spark of hope deep inside, but she also couldn't shake the fear that this might just be a temporary moment of kindness that wouldn't last. Still, she couldn't help but wonder if maybe, just maybe, Elon Musk might be the one to change everything. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in what felt like forever, she had a reason to believe that it might not be over yet. As the tension hung in the air, the room fell into a heavy silence. No one spoke, no one moved. All eyes were on Musk, waiting to see what he would do next. Would he continue to push Greg? Would he force a decision? Or would he simply let the moment slip away, like so many others before? The tension in the room had reached a boiling point, yet no one dared to speak. The silence between Musk and Greg was palpable, and Anna, though overwhelmed by the unexpected support, still felt the weight of the situation pressing on her. She was a passive spectator in this high-stakes confrontation, unable to make a move. All she could do was watch as the two men circled each other, both determined to win, but in completely different ways. Greg was growing increasingly agitated, his frustration manifesting in his clenched fists. His eyes darted between Musk and Anna, almost as though he could not decide who to focus on. Was he angry at Musk for undermining him, or was he more furious at himself for having to explain his actions to someone with Musk's stature? He had built his career on making tough decisions, on controlling the narrative, and now here he was, caught in a battle of wills that he had never anticipated. Musk was not like the others. He didn't back down, and that infuriated Greg even more. Listen, Musk, Greg said, forcing the words out through gritted teeth. This is my business. You don't get to walk in here and tell me how to run things. You don't understand the pressures I'm under. You don't know the first thing about what it takes to make these tough decisions. You may be a genius in technology, but you don't know a damn thing about managing a team, let alone a company like this. Musk remained silent for a moment, his expression unreadable. It was clear that Greg's words had struck a nerve, but Musk was careful not to react too quickly. He knew that Greg was playing defense, But he also knew that the conversation wasn't over. There was too much at stake here, and Musk wasn't about to let this go easily. "You're right, Greg," Musk finally said, his voice calm yet unwavering. "I may not know exactly what it's like to be in your position, but what I do know is this: you're treating Anna like she's disposable, like her worth is defined by a few numbers on a spreadsheet. And that's where you're wrong." Anna, still silent in the corner, felt her chest tighten. Musk was speaking directly to Greg, but it felt like he was speaking to her, too. It felt like someone finally saw her for who she was, not just a failure or a statistic to be discarded when things didn't go according to plan. She had always struggled with self-worth, but Musk's words seemed to chip away at that wall she had built around herself. For the first time in a long while, she felt seen. Greg scoffed, crossing his arms over his chest as though Musk had said nothing at all. "You think you can change things with some words? This isn't a charity. This is a business. The bottom line matters, Musk. And if you can't see that, then you don't belong in this room." He stepped forward, closing the space between him and Musk, a thinly veiled challenge in his eyes. Musk didn't flinch. He simply tilted his head, sizing Greg up with an almost disarming calmness. "Business isn't just about the bottom line. It's about people. If you don't understand that, then you're not as smart as you think you are." Greg opened his mouth to retort, but Musk held up a hand, silencing him. "Here's the thing, Greg," Musk continued. "You've probably convinced yourself that firing Anna is the right thing to do, that it will solve your problems. But what if you're wrong? What if the decision you're making right now isn't about business, but about your ego? About proving that you can make the tough calls, no matter who gets hurt in the process?" The silence in the room deepened as Greg faltered, his bravado starting to crumble. For the first time, he seemed unsure of himself. He had always seen himself as a decisive leader, someone who could do what needed to be done without hesitation. But Musk had challenged that, and now doubt was creeping into his mind. Anna's heart raced as she watched this unfolding. Was Musk really getting through to him? Could he actually change Greg's mind, make him see the error of his ways? She didn't know if she believed it was possible, but there was something in Musk's demeanor, his quiet confidence, his unshakable belief in what was right, that made her think maybe, just maybe, he could do what no one else had done before. "You think firing me will solve everything? Don't you, Greg?" Anna finally spoke, her voice trembling but strong. "But you're wrong. It won't fix anything. It will only make things worse. You can't just throw people away like they're nothing. We're not just tools for you to use until we're no longer useful." Greg stared at her, clearly taken aback by her words. For a moment, he seemed to consider her statement. But then his expression hardened, and he turned his gaze back to Musk. "You don't get it, do you, Anna?" Greg sneered. "I'm doing this because it's necessary. I'm making the tough decisions that need to be made. If you can't handle it, that's on you. And Musk, you can keep lecturing me all you want, but it won't change anything. I'm in charge here." Musk's eyes narrowed, his jaw tightening slightly as he regarded Greg. He wasn't done yet. "You're right, Greg. You're in charge. But leadership isn't about making people feel small. It's about lifting them up, helping them grow. And right now, you're failing at that." Anna swallowed hard. She had heard these words before, but never in the way Musk was saying them. It was as if he was giving her permission to believe in herself again, to trust that she wasn't just a lost cause, that she still had value. Greg's face reddened, his frustration becoming more apparent. He wasn't used to being confronted like this, especially not by someone as influential as Musk. And as much as he tried to hold onto his position, to maintain the illusion of control, he could feel the ground shifting beneath him. "You're wrong," Greg muttered under his breath. But it was clear that even he wasn't sure if he truly believed it anymore. Musk stood his ground, unwavering. "Maybe I am wrong, but you'll never know unless you take a step back and consider the bigger picture. Firing Anna won't fix your problems, Greg. It will only create new ones." Anna stood there, her heart pounding. She had never felt more conflicted in her life. The hope that Musk had sparked in her was undeniable, but she was still afraid. Afraid that it was too late. Afraid that Greg would never change. But as Musk continued to challenge him, Anna realized that something was happening. Maybe the situation wasn't as hopeless as she had thought. Maybe, just maybe, she had a chance. And as she glanced at Musk, she knew he wouldn't stop until the right thing was done. As the tension in the room continued to grow, it was clear that the standoff between Musk and Greg was far from over. Anna stood silently, her heart racing as the two men exchanged barbs. Musk's presence was a steady force, unyielding and calm, while Greg's frustration grew with every word he said. The power dynamics had shifted, but Greg was not about to go down without a fight. Musk's calmness only seemed to fuel Greg's ire. Every time Greg tried to assert his authority, Musk countered with logic and confidence. It was becoming clear that Greg was out of his depth. He had always prided himself on his ability to make tough decisions, but now, faced with a man who was not intimidated by his status or his power, Greg felt cornered. And the more Musk spoke, the more his self-assuredness wavered. "You think you can just waltz in here and change everything?" Greg snapped, his voice rising. "This is my company. I built this from the ground up. I don't need you or anyone else telling me how to run things." Musk didn't flinch. "I'm not here to tell you how to run your company, Greg," he said, his voice steady. "I'm here to remind you of what it means to be a leader. Leadership is about more than making decisions based on convenience or power. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. Right now, you're making a decision that's wrong. You're throwing Anna away like she's just a cog in the machine." Greg's face reddened. "You don't know anything about me or my company. You think you can come in here and lecture me about leadership? Who are you to tell me what's right or wrong?" Musk's gaze didn't waver. "I'm someone who's seen what happens when leaders fail to recognize the people they're leading. I've seen what happens when leaders put profits before people, and it never ends well. You may think firing Anna will solve your problems, but it won't. It will only create more." Greg was trembling with anger now, his hands balled into fists at his sides. His voice was low, almost a growl as he spoke. "You don't know the pressure I'm under. You don't understand the decisions I have to make. If I don't make these decisions, I'm out of a job. And you know what happens when I'm out of a job? My family suffers. My employees suffer. You don't get it." Musk leaned forward, his eyes locking with Greg's. "I do get it, Greg. I get it more than you think. But you can't lead by fear. You can't lead by making people feel small, like they don't matter. Because they do matter. Anna matters. And firing her isn't going to make your problems go away. It's going to make them worse." Greg was seething now, his breath shallow as he tried to maintain his composure. But the cracks were showing. He had built his empire on decisions like these, on the ability to make the tough calls, but Musk had broken through that armor. The words, the calmness, the unwavering conviction. Greg wasn't prepared for this. Anna watched, heart in her throat, as Greg's composure cracked. She could see the internal struggle. She could see how much he hated being confronted like this, how much he hated being told that he was wrong. But she could also see how Musk's words were getting through to him, how they were planting a seed of doubt in his mind. "I'm not asking you to be weak, Greg," Musk continued, his voice gentle but firm. "I'm asking you to be strong enough to do what's right, to see the bigger picture, to see that people are more important than profits. You can't be a leader without compassion, without empathy, without understanding that the decisions you make have real consequences on the lives of others." Greg opened his mouth to respond, but the words died on his lips. He had no comeback. Musk had hit him where it hurt, had forced him to face the truth he'd been avoiding for so long. And now, standing there trying to keep his composure, Greg realized that maybe Musk was right. Maybe he had been so focused on the bottom line, on maintaining his power, that he had forgotten the most important thing about leadership: the people. Anna stood frozen in place, her mind reeling. She had never expected this, never imagined that someone like Musk would come to her defense like this. She had always thought that people like Greg held all the power, that they were the ones who called the shots. But now, with Musk standing up to him, she realized that power wasn't always about position or money. It was about standing up for what was right, even when it was hard. Greg took a step back, his eyes flicking to Anna and then back to Musk. He was clearly rattled, his confidence faltering in the face of Musk's quiet determination. But even in that moment of doubt, he was unwilling to back down completely. He had too much pride, too much at stake to let go of his decision so easily. "Fine," Greg said, his voice tinged with bitterness. "You think you have all the answers, but this isn't over. You can't change the way things work here. I make the decisions, not you." Musk remained silent, his gaze unwavering as Greg's words hung in the air. Anna could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, the tension building with every passing second. The standoff wasn't over, and she could feel it. There was more to come. Greg turned and stormed out of the room, leaving Musk and Anna alone in the silence. Anna's heart was still racing, her mind struggling to process what had just happened. She had been so certain that she was on the losing side, that she was powerless in the face of Greg's authority. But now, as she stood there, watching Musk's calm presence, she realized that maybe things weren't as hopeless as she had thought. Musk turned to her, his face softening slightly. "You don't deserve to be treated like that, Anna. No one does." Anna didn't know what to say. She was still too stunned to speak, too overwhelmed by the emotions swirling inside her. But as she looked at Musk, standing there with quiet confidence, she couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing for sure: she wasn't alone. The tension in the room hung thick as the door to Greg's office slammed shut behind him. Anna stood frozen, trying to make sense of the whirlwind conversation that had just transpired. The energy in the space had shifted, but it wasn't clear if that shift had been for the better. She had never imagined that someone like Elon Musk would walk in and defend her like that. But now, standing here, unsure of what to do next, she wondered if her relief was premature. Musk remained calm, his face betraying nothing as he leaned back slightly, his eyes never leaving Anna. She could feel the weight of his gaze, the intensity of his presence filling the room. His silence spoke volumes. What was he thinking? Was he expecting her to thank him? Was this all some sort of performance? Or was he genuinely concerned? "Are you okay?" Musk's voice cut through her thoughts, soft but direct. Anna nodded slowly, unsure of how to process what had just happened. The words that had been exchanged felt like a blur, but the weight of the situation was clear. She could feel the remnants of fear and confusion still clinging to her chest. This wasn't a simple confrontation over a firing. This was about power, authority, and whether anyone could really stand up to the system that was designed to crush people like her. And Musk had done just that. I'm fine," she replied, though her voice quivered slightly, betraying the turbulence inside her. "I don't know what to say. I didn't expect you to come in and—" Musk cut her off with a small shake of his head. "You don't have to say anything. You don't have to explain. This shouldn't have happened in the first place. And you shouldn't have to put up with it." Anna's heart skipped a beat as she processed his words. "But it always happens, doesn't it? The people at the top get to make all the decisions while people like me, like us, were nothing but pawns." The rawness in her voice took her by surprise. She had been so focused on just getting by, surviving the daily grind, that she hadn't really taken the time to think about how her work and her life had become a constant battle. But now, facing Musk, she realized how deeply she had internalized the idea that she didn't matter, that her worth, her very being, was defined by her job, by what she could offer to someone else. Musk's eyes softened, and for the first time, there was a trace of something warmer in his expression. "No one is a pawn, Anna. Not you, not anyone. But people often forget that. People like Greg forget that. They lose sight of what really matters." Anna was about to respond when the sound of footsteps echoed from the hallway, signaling the arrival of someone else. She quickly wiped the lingering tears from her eyes, trying to compose herself. As the door creaked open, another employee stepped inside, their face tense and concerned. The tension from earlier still hung in the air, but now it was being compounded by this new, unexpected presence. It was one of the managers from the lower floor. Anna had never spoken to her much, but she knew her well enough to recognize the discomfort on her face. "Anna, everything okay?" she asked, her voice edged with apprehension. She had clearly overheard part of the exchange between Musk and Greg. I think so, Anna said, her voice wavering again. But there's still a lot to figure out. She glanced toward Musk for reassurance, but he gave nothing away. The manager looked between the two of them, eyes narrowing slightly. She seemed unsure of what to make of Musk's involvement, of how to process the fact that a high-profile figure like him had just stepped in to intervene on her behalf. Anna knew it wasn't just her job that was at risk now. It was the entire company culture that seemed to be under threat. Musk straightened slightly, his posture now more assertive. "You may want to let Greg know that things are going to change around here," he said, his voice steady and resolute. The manager flinched, clearly unnerved by his words. "I don't think that's something we can just—" "Greg doesn't call the shots anymore," Musk interrupted, his tone unyielding. "Not like he used to. If anyone thinks they can just fire someone on a whim without facing consequences, they're gravely mistaken. You don't get to treat people like that." The words hung in the air, and Anna could feel the gravity of what Musk was saying. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about everything. The very way people like her were treated, the way they were pushed down, belittled, discarded. It all came rushing back to her. She had been so close to giving up, so close to walking away. But now, standing here with Musk, something had shifted. The manager, still standing near the door, glanced nervously at Anna, then at Musk. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but nothing came out. It was clear that she, too, was processing the weight of what had just happened. The fear of losing her own position in the corporate hierarchy, the uncertainty of how things would change, was written plainly on her face. Anna felt a strange sense of solidarity with this manager, even though they had never been close. In this moment, they were both caught in the same storm, both victims of the same system that had allowed Greg to make such callous decisions. They were all part of a game where the rules weren't made for the people at the bottom. Musk turned his gaze back to Anna. "You don't have to accept this, Anna, and neither does anyone else. Don't let them make you feel small." Her heart raced as she considered his words. For the first time in a long while, she felt like she might have a chance. Maybe things wouldn't be perfect, maybe the road ahead would be difficult, but she could stand up for herself. She could fight back. But the reality of the situation was complicated. Nothing was guaranteed. Greg had already made his decision. He was unlikely to back down without a fight. The system that allowed people like him to thrive wasn't going to change overnight. As Musk and the manager exchanged a few more words, Anna stepped back slightly, leaning against the wall, her mind spinning with the possibilities. She knew she wasn't the only one affected by this toxic culture. There were others out there. Other employees who had been dismissed, overlooked, mistreated. And maybe, just maybe, there was a chance for things to change. But the future was uncertain, and the battle wasn't over yet. In that moment, Anna made a decision. She wasn't going to let fear control her anymore. She wasn't going to back down. But what came next, she couldn't know. She only hoped that when the dust settled, it would be worth it. The silence in the room seemed deafening. Anna stood still, her hands clasped tightly together as she watched the manager, still visibly shaken, exchange uneasy glances with Musk. The tension that had settled into the room wasn't just a result of the previous confrontation. It was the anticipation of what was about to unfold. Anna could feel it in her chest, a weight pressing down on her, the uncertainty of what would happen next gnawing at her thoughts. She knew that Musk had made a powerful statement, but now the reality of the situation was slowly creeping in. Musk was not going to let this go. He'd already made it clear, but Anna didn't know whether that meant a victory for her or another battle to face. The last thing she wanted was to be caught in a power struggle, forced to play into the hands of people like Greg or the higher-ups who had long ignored the value of their employees. She had no desire to engage in any more games or manipulations. But there was a part of her that couldn't shake the feeling of hope, a flicker of something new, even if it was terrifying to embrace. Musk turned his attention back to the manager, his gaze unwavering. "I suggest you let Greg know that this isn't something he can sweep under the rug," Musk said, his tone steady, as though he were speaking to someone far more influential than just a middle manager in a corporate structure. This isn't how we do things. This is not how you treat people." The manager opened her mouth, seemingly struggling to respond, but the words didn't come. She looked to Anna for a brief moment, her face tightening in discomfort. Was she sympathetic? Or was she merely trying to figure out how to navigate this unexpected twist? There was no way of knowing. Anna couldn't tell if the manager was on her side or if she feared Musk's intervention would only complicate matters further. Musk's stance shifted slightly as he took in the atmosphere of the room. If Greg wants to continue doing business in a place like this, he'll need to understand that things have changed. The way people are treated is non-negotiable. You've got to start holding people accountable. As Musk spoke, Anna felt her mind racing. Was it really that simple? Could the system be altered by a single powerful act? She thought about the numerous others who had been swept under the rug, their fates decided by the whims of managers and bosses who saw them as replaceable. Could they all stand up and demand a better system? And if they did, would it change anything? Or was it all just smoke and mirrors? A fleeting hope that things might improve before they once again fell into the same patterns of exploitation? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps, a figure entering the room from the hallway. Another senior manager, possibly someone higher in the ranks than the first, appeared in the doorway, his brow furrowed in confusion. Anna recognized him, but she didn't know his name. His eyes scanned the room, taking in the scene. Musk standing with his arms crossed, the manager still standing near the door, and Anna caught somewhere between disbelief and a newfound determination. "Musk, what the hell's going on here?" The new arrival demanded, his tone laced with irritation. "What's all this noise about? We've got a business to run, not a charity." Musk didn't flinch, his demeanor as calm as ever. "I think your employee needs a lesson in how to treat people with respect," he replied, his voice clipped but clear. "Maybe it's time we rethink how things are done around here." The senior manager scowled, his face flushing with frustration. "You think you can just come in here and change everything? You think you know better than the rest of us?" His voice rose, his attempts at maintaining control slipping. Musk's gaze didn't waver. "I think I'm doing exactly what's needed. You're so busy worrying about the bottom line that you forget what it's built on. The people you rely on to make it work." The tension between the two men was palpable, but it was more than just a disagreement over company policies. It was a battle for control, a power struggle that had been brewing for far too long. And it was clear that Musk wasn't about to back down. His voice remained steady, unwavering in its conviction. Anna watched the scene unfold, the fight for dignity playing out right before her. She could see the conflict in the manager's eyes, the frustration and helplessness he was trying to mask. But beneath it all, she could also see the growing realization that Musk wasn't going to let this pass. It wasn't just about a single firing, it was about the system itself. The flawed, toxic culture that had allowed people like Greg and others in power to keep getting away with mistreating employees without consequence. She had been part of that system, part of that cycle of submission and fear. She had played along with the expectations, tried to blend in, to keep her head down and her thoughts to herself. But now, in this moment, she realized that she couldn't anymore. She didn't want to. There was a surge of adrenaline, a desire to push back. But at the same time, doubt crept in, slowly replacing the clarity that had momentarily washed over her. What if Musk was wrong? What if the battle she was considering wasn't as simple as he made it seem? There was too much at stake, too many layers to unravel. And as much as Musk's words stirred something in her, she didn't know if it was enough to change everything. As the senior manager turned to leave the room, clearly rattled by the confrontation, Anna's eyes lingered on Musk. He was standing tall, his posture confident and firm. There was no sense of urgency or panic in his demeanor, only the calm of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. It was as if he had done this countless times before, stepping into situations that were already fraught with tension and conflict, and shifting the entire dynamic with a few carefully chosen words. For Anna, however, it wasn't so clear. She still had too many questions, too much uncertainty clouding her thoughts. Would this really be enough to change things? Would Greg finally face the consequences of his actions? Would the rest of the team stand with her? Or would they return to their places, silently watching the same patterns unfold? Musk gave her one last look, but before he could say anything, the door to the office opened once more. Another figure stepped inside, this time someone Anna recognized. It was one of the junior associates, someone who had been in the company for years, quietly working away in the background. "Musk, we need to talk," the associate said, his voice heavy with something Anna couldn't place. "This isn't over." Not by a long shot. Anna froze as the associate's words hung in the air, knowing that this wasn't just about her anymore. The situation was about to get even more complicated. Musk turned to face the associate. "What's going on here?" His voice was calm but firm, his words carrying the weight of someone who was already done with the pretense. "You're not here to tell me that everything's fine. If it was, this wouldn't be happening." The associate's jaw tightened, and for a moment, Anna wondered if he was going to back down or rise to the challenge. It was clear now that Musk wasn't going to let the situation slide, but she also sensed that there was more to the story than what had been shown so far. "We've been trying to get through to Greg for months." The associate finally spoke, his words measured but full of frustration. "You think this is about just one incident? This has been building for a while. Greg's behavior, the way he's treated people, it's a pattern. But it's not just him. It's the whole system, the way things are run around here." Anna's heart raced as the associate's words sank in. This was no longer just about a single unfair firing. It was about something much bigger, a toxic system that had created an environment of fear and intimidation. She had always known, deep down, that something was off, but hearing someone else finally say it out loud made everything feel that much more real. "You're telling me that Greg's not the only one?" Musk's voice had a hard edge now, his eyes narrowing. "Then why has nothing been done? Why are we still standing here, letting people like him walk all over others?" The associate hesitated for a moment, and Anna could see the conflict in his eyes. This wasn't an easy conversation to have, but it was one that had been long overdue. Finally, he spoke again, his voice a little quieter this time. "It's not just Greg. It's the whole management structure. People have been looking the other way for years. They've let things like this slide because it's easier than making waves. And now it's gotten to the point where we're all just complicit in it." The associate seemed to sense the shift in Musk's demeanor and took a step closer. "We've been trying to make changes, but it's been hard. People are scared to speak up. Everyone's afraid of what might happen if they do." Musk turned back to the associate, his voice cold now, like a blade being unsheathed. "This ends today," he said. "We're not going to let this happen anymore. It's time to take action. Time to make sure that people like Greg, people who think they can get away with treating others like dirt, finally face the consequences." The associate, now visibly shaken, nodded slowly. "You're right. We've all been too afraid to speak up. But it's time we start doing things differently." Musk's eyes never wavered from the associate, but there was a glimmer of approval in his gaze. "Good," he said. "Now let's fix this." In the end, the story of Elon Musk stepping in to confront the corrupt manager and his oppressive behavior isn't just about a big-name celebrity taking action. It's about a message that transcends the confines of corporate walls. Musk's bold decision to intervene wasn't just a moment of high drama. It was a reflection of something far deeper, the power of standing up for what's right, regardless of the consequences. This isn't just a story about one individual. It's a reflection on all of us, about how we can sometimes stand idly by when we see injustice unfolding. How many times have we witnessed something wrong happening, but out of fear or apathy, we chose not to act? Musk's intervention serves as a reminder that it takes more than just the person being mistreated to make a change. It takes someone willing to stand tall, challenge the status quo, and say, "Enough is enough." This story isn't just a dramatic corporate standoff. It's a call for us all to think about what we're willing to tolerate and what we're willing to fight against. When we see someone else suffering, whether it's from mistreatment at work, bullying, or injustice in any form, the right thing to do is to step forward, raise our voices, and ensure that the situation is heard, understood, and, most importantly, addressed. Musk did not just change the fate of one person. He sent a message that echoed through everyone present. He demonstrated that while there are many systems and structures that try to hold us down, there is also power in unity, in speaking up, and in pushing back against what we know is wrong. The story also asks us to reflect on the importance of standing in solidarity with the underdog. Too often, in our daily lives, we encounter situations where the powerful exploit their position for personal gain. However, the moment someone in a position of power steps up for those who can't defend themselves, it not only changes the lives of those directly involved but sends ripples through the rest of society. It's a reminder that we can all make a difference, no matter our role or status, and that true leadership comes from understanding and addressing the struggles of others. When we stand up against wrongdoing, when we speak for those who can't speak for themselves, it's a reflection of what kind of society we want to live in. One where kindness, justice, and courage are valued above all else. So, let this be more than just a story of corporate justice. Let it be a call to action for us all to recognize the power we have in standing up for what's right. Whether in our workplaces, communities, or in our personal lives, each of us has the ability to make a lasting change. Musk's example serves as a reminder that we all have a responsibility to act, to stand tall, and to make the world a better place for everyone, starting with the small actions we take in our everyday lives. What did you think about this incredible turn of events? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to hit the like button if you believe we can all make a difference. Let's start a conversation about standing up for others and the change we can create when we decide to act.